Imagine being sentenced to death, not for violence, not for rebellion, not for breaking any law, but for asking too many questions. That's exactly what happened to one of the most influential thinkers in history. His name was Socrates, and the city that executed him was Athens, the birthplace of democracy. The strange man of Athens. Socrates didn't look like the great philosophers people imagine today. Ancient writers describe him as short, bald, with bulging eyes and a flattened nose. He walked barefoot through the streets of Athens, wearing the same simple cloak every day. He owned almost nothing. He had no school, no official job, and he never wrote a single book. Yet thousands of people came to listen to him speak. Why? Because Socrates had a habit that made powerful people extremely uncomfortable. He asked questions. The Socratic method. Socrates believed something radical. Most people thought they were wise, but they weren't. So he would walk up to politicians, poets, generals, and craftsmen and ask them simple questions. What is justice? What is courage? What is virtue? At first, the person would answer confidently, but Socrates would keep asking more questions, and more, and more. Slowly, the person would realize something embarrassing. They didn't actually know the answer. Socrates called this discovering wisdom, because, in his words, the only true wisdom is knowing that you know nothing. Athens after war. To understand why Socrates became dangerous, you need to understand Athens. Athens had just lost a brutal war against Sparta. The city was unstable. People were angry. Politicians were blamed for failure. Trust in authority was fragile. And here was Socrates, standing in public spaces, questioning everything, including the people in power. To many Athenians, this didn't look like philosophy. It looked like trouble. The youth problem Socrates had another problem. Young people loved him, especially wealthy young Athenians. They would follow him through the streets, watching him question famous citizens. And they started copying him. Young men began challenging politicians, generals, and teachers. Publicly, embarrassingly. To older Athenians, it looked like Socrates was teaching the youth to disrespect authority. And that accusation would later become one of the charges against him. The trial. In 399 BC, Socrates was finally brought to court. The charges were serious, corrupting the youth, and not believing in the gods of Athens. A jury of around 500 citizens gathered to decide his fate. Socrates could have defended himself carefully. He could have apologized. He could have promised to stop teaching. Instead, he did the exact opposite. He told the jury that he had spent his life helping Athens by exposing false wisdom. He even suggested that instead of punishment, the city should reward him. Not surprisingly, the jury didn't find this amusing. They voted, and Socrates was found guilty. A chance to escape. Even after the verdict, Socrates had options. His friends offered to help him escape prison. They had money, they had connections. It would have been possible, but Socrates refused. He believed something deeply important. If you spend your life teaching people to respect the law, you cannot break the law when it becomes inconvenient, even if that law condemns you. So he stayed and waited. The execution. His execution method was simple: a cup of poison called hemlock. On the day of his death, his friends gathered around him in the prison cell. Some of them cried, but Socrates stayed calm. He drank the poison. Slowly, the paralysis spread through his body. First, his legs, then his chest, and finally, his breathing stopped. One of the greatest thinkers in history died in a prison cell because he asked questions. The legacy. But Socrates didn't disappear, because one of the young men who followed him was named Plato. Plato would go on to write dialogues describing Socrates' conversations. Those writings shaped philosophy for the next 2,000 years. Without Socrates, there's no Plato. Without Plato, there's no Aristotle. And without Aristotle, much of Western philosophy might never have existed. The man who was executed for asking questions ended up influencing the entire history of human thought. Socrates never claimed to have the answers. In fact, he believed the opposite. That wisdom begins the moment you realize how little you truly know. And maybe that's why his story still matters today. Because sometimes, the most dangerous thing a person can do is simply ask the wrong question.